really close to the fence. That is significantly too close to that fence. What is up, Fence fam? Welcome back to another reaction video. If you've watched the channel before, you know how this works. Jeremy and Braden have gone out and scoured the YouTubes looking for fence-related videos that they think that you guys might like to watch my reaction to. But first, a message from our sponsor. This reaction video is brought to you by Nationwide Industries. I am so glad that they came on as a sponsor because we legitimately enjoy using their hardware and fence fittings. When it comes to pool gates, we love using both the Trident latch and the Cornerstone 2 hinge. Both of these are incredibly durable. Check out Nationwide Industries by clicking the link in the description. All right, everybody, today's video is titled Revive Your Fence in 3 Easy Steps for Cheap from the BYOT Bring Your Own Tools channel. You guys should check out this channel. Seems like they provide legitimately good content. And we're here to learn how to revive a fence in 3 easy steps for cheap. To check out the original video in its original format, we'll have it linked in the description below.
Well, hello there. Brent here with Bring Your Own Tools. On today's episode, we're giving this fence line a bit of a makeover and changing it from this to this. If you want to learn how to do it, keep on watching.
Pretty good change.
But it started.
All right, so already we saw the dreaded pressure washer get broken out. All right, let's see how it goes.
Oh, my poor cedar fence. This thing has been neglected for years, and if you haven't seen it already,
Looks like it was well built, though, right? Now, I'm not super familiar with the channel. He may have built this fence himself. Looks really well done. They used Torx screws, Torx head screws for the rails. Looks like they nailed on the top cap, but yeah, looks like it's well built.
a full tutorial on how to install this fence over 5 years ago, and in all honesty, it's still very structurally sound and in great shape, but it does need a good makeover. At the time of installation, I just wanted it to naturally weather over time, and as you can see, it does have a nice gray tone to it, but I do want to bring back the inner beauty within this fence that I know is still there, which all starts first with a pressure washer.
So it does sometimes start with a pressure washer. Now, typically with a wider nozzle on it, so we're using volume, not pressure. We've done a cleaning video here on the channel. We'll see how this goes, but typically pressure is not going to be your friend with an older fence.
This is a 3000 PSI pressure washer, and you certainly don't need this much PSI for this job, but it does make life a little bit easier. I tighten the hose and the nozzle as well as turn on our water prior to turning on the machine. Once I have the pressure washer primed, I turn it on and away we go. Now I do decide to go with the clean nozzle for this pressure washer.
So a little bit more pressure than what you would want to see used on a fence. What they call the wash nozzle looks like it's a little bit more open, a little bit less pressure. The problem you get into is etching. You can typically see wand marks when you're using a higher pressure nozzle. Typically, professionals would use some sort of soft washing technique. Typically, sodium hypochlorite is a place that they start, also active ingredient in bleach, to actually kill organics. Anyway, let's see how this goes.
There are multiple ones to choose from, but I find the clean nozzle provides the best of both worlds because it provides a wide enough spray fan to make this job extremely quick, but it also
really close to the fence. That is significantly too close to that fence. So here's the problem: is you're probably going to start seeing wand marks on the fence where he goes back and forth in a sweeping motion. It also is jam-packing whatever is in the surface into the fiber of the wood. Now, it is also stripping off the outer layer, but the right way would be to use a wood cleaner to actually get rid of the organics, to kill the organics both on the surface and within the wood. Our go-to choice, Sand Steel Experts, has an eco cleaner and a wood cleaner, but never a pressure washer with that aggressive of a tip this close.
provides plenty of pressure to remove all this dirt and grime that's been here for years. The years just melt away with one.
As you can see, we're already seeing wand marks just to the left of the edge of this board where some parts get more clean than other parts. This is the problem with using a pressure washer. Just as someone without training, you could really make a mess with it.
Pass of this pressure washer, which is truly remarkable and super satisfying, at least I must say. Keep in mind that our posts and top caps are pressure treated Douglas fir, but the actual planks themselves are cedar, and the cedar is a very soft wood, so you do want to take your time and due diligence and make sure that you're not damaging the wood as you're cleaning it.
Unfortunately, using that tip that close to the board, he is damaging it while he's cleaning it.
With wood like this, you can actually damage it with a pressure washer, so just make sure you back up a little bit and try and avoid any fraying like this. But this still is super satisfying to watch and will take care of these wood strands once they're all dried. The only other tip I have for pressure washing is to make sure you're not abruptly stopping in the middle of a board. This is kind of difficult to do, but if you can take nice fluid passes all the way across the board and end at your post, that will make it a really nice transition and you won't see any marks. Sometimes if you stop in the very middle of a board, you might see a slight discoloration or change because you unintentionally left your pressure washer on that point for a mere half a second, but it can change the look of the cleanliness because of the fact these boards are so dirty. Now you could just stop here and call it good, but I want these boards to look as good as possible for as long as possible, and that's why we need to do a bit of sanding. But before we sand them, we need to let them dry out for at least 24 to 48 hours.
That's a good point. You do want the board to dry before. Typically, we would just go straight to stain. Now, the reason that he's sanding it is because he used an aggressive tip that close to the board. Typically, using like a proper soft wash system, you wouldn't see the furring and it wouldn't require sanding. But you do want the board to be totally dry before you stain it. Now, I would recommend going on to Amazon or your local hardware store and getting a moisture meter. They're typically $30 or $40. It will actually give you an exact readout of the moisture content of the board so that you're not just relying on that it's been a few days. You're actually knowing whether or not that board is dry.
As you can see, our pressure washer did an amazing job at cleaning the vast majority of the gunk off of these cedar planks, but
unfortunately that top cap still looks green. It very well could be the color editing in the video, but that would certainly concern me.
We still have to sand them first before we apply our finish. So let's get to sanding and then we'll get to finishing.
In order to sand all these boards properly and quickly, I'm taking my 6-inch random orbital sander and going over all the surfaces with 150 grit sandpaper. This is not a mandatory or fully necessary step, but it does provide a very nice professional look and feel if you're trying to make over this fence line.
So I'll say this, I don't want sanding to sound like it's not supposed to happen or that I don't think it should happen. It's perfectly fine. I don't know that it's obviously not gonna harm the fence. It probably will make for a nicer step. I think my point was that if you soft wash it, you could actually skip this step.
Plus, keep in mind that we're not trying to produce a perfectly smooth finish. We're just trying to clean up the faces of each board because the pressure washer produced small frays in the wood during the cleaning process. This sanding cleans up those wood fibers extremely easy, and it took me a mere hour to 90 minutes to do this entire fence line. And that's with me videotaping the entire process, which does take a little extra time to do everything I do. Also, make sure you're wearing a...
I wonder what he used that. What is that, a hammer drill next to the weed eater? I wonder what that was for.
Wearing a proper respirator when doing this work. Yes, you're outside and minimal dust is going to get into your lungs, but you still don't want to be breathing in any of the stuff that's coming off of these boards. As we complete the sanding process, it's now time for finishing. But before we apply our finish, I do suggest applying some Visqueen to the back side of the fence, especially if it's in your neighbor's yard. Just make sure you get permission first.
I want to take a quick minute and talk about chain link hardware. In this hand, we have a gate frame hinge bought from a national wholesaler, brand new out of the bag. This hinge, Nationwide, straight out of the bag. Which would you choose? Check out Nationwide Industries by clicking their link in the description below. It's a great point. I mean, even with the best wrapping job here, you still want to talk to your neighbors about it because there still is a really good chance there's going to be some overspray. Definitely take all the precautions, but also have the conversation. There's a good chance there's going to be some spray end up over on their side of the fence.
This way, our finish doesn't accidentally seep into my neighbor's beautiful garden bed. And speaking of finish, we are using Old Master's Ascend exterior and applying it with the...
So it looks like it looks like it's just a water-based finish, so he's not actually sealing the board for longevity or anything. To do it right, to really do it the correct way would be to use an actual stain and sealant. You could even get a clear stain and sealant, so it wouldn't actually be a stain, it'd be a sealant. To add some more longevity to these boards, I mean, it'd be the same process. You could still use the same sprayer. The problem with water-based is it's not actually going to provide a lot of protection. Water needs additives added to it so that it makes it repel itself, other water, rain and such. Oil-based is going to naturally repel that water. And I'm not talking about like a petroleum water-based. I'm talking about there's other plant-based oils that do a great job. Oil-based would be the way to go.
The Wagner Control Pro QX5 sprayer. This sprayer is specifically designed for stains and finishes, and it can spray vertically as well as horizontally with just a twist of the knob. Super functional and easy to use, and by just removing the cup and filling it up with our finish, we can get to spraying in no time. Now with a clear finish like this, you don't have to worry too much about mixing it because it's not a paint.
I almost wonder if this is like an interior finish. I'm not familiar with it at all, but I almost wonder if it's like an interior, like a trim finish or something like that. I'm not familiar with it in the exterior wood preservative space.
But you still should stir it around a bit just to make sure you don't have any weird variants within your finish. I fill up our cup, attach it to our nozzle housing, and away we go. But before we apply it to our fence, I do want to test it out on a test sheet. Always advise that first before you start spraying because you want to make sure it's pumping out the correct volume of finish as well as spray fan pattern. Once we like it, we can move on to our fence. And the real reason why I love spraying finish on a fence like this is because it makes it so extremely easy to apply. Especially on all those weird tight-knit corners, it provides a very nice even coverage over the entire span in mere seconds versus a more long drawn-out process with a roller or paintbrush. I do generally suggest working in sections, and after I have the first section fully applied with finish, I grab a large block brush. Now this block brush is designed for stains and finishes, especially exterior work.
One of the other benefits of using like a oil-based penetrating stain would be the lack of back brushing required.
And I just want to do a once over the entire thing because I want to guarantee that all that finish is seeped into the wood as smoothly as possible. Now, I would never suggest using a block brush to apply this finish on this surface because of the fact that it's really difficult to get into these tight-knit areas and spaces, but that's why I use the sprayer first and then come back around with a block brush. The one thing to keep in mind when doing a project like this is weather, and to make sure you have a consistent few days at least without any precipitation. And that's why we actually went with a water-based product on a fence like this. There are plenty of amazing oil-based finishes out there, and I'll make sure and leave a link to one in the description box below that I would happily suggest, but you do need to make sure that it's at least above 60 degrees as well as without any moisture or precipitation for 24 to 48 hours. And we don't.
That might be true. I didn't see which one he linked in the description. That might be true of some brands. Again, so we prefer Standstill Experts. They don't have those types of temperature regulation. And actually, it's kind of odd that he says it. So typically, the water-based stain and sealants are the ones that you see have a temperature requirement or regulation. The oil-based stain, we've applied it well below 60 degrees, and it's typically water resistant, I guess, streak resistant within a couple hours.
We don't have that in Pacific Northwest, at least at this time period, so we used a water base which dries in a mere couple of hours. Plus, the water-based cleanup is extremely easy compared to oil-based. If you do want to go with an oil, I really enjoy using this Preserva Wood Penetrating Oil Stain and Sealant. It goes on extremely quickly and provides a really rich, beautiful color, but of course the caveat is, you do have to have a certain temperature requirement as well as making sure there's no precipitation in the near future.
I haven't heard of the Preserva either, and it might be that this was made, maybe the video was made up in Canada where some of the brands are different. But Preserva is not one that I'm familiar with as a professional wood care product.
At this point in time, I wanted to say a huge and special thank you to our sponsor this week, Wagner. They wanted me to show off this new control sprayer, and I really did enjoy working with it and had plenty of power for this entire project.
So that also, I guess, could have been a stain brand that Wagner wanted to see used.
After I apply our first coat, I let it dry for approximately an hour and apply a second coat right after. But after all of your spraying is taken care of, you can remove your plastic visqueen on the back side and feel good that some well-needed maintenance was taken care of.
Unfortunately, he didn't preserve the other side of the fence. So, which I guess again, so it's a finish. It's not a stain or sealant. So there's actually not a preservative. But to do it right, you'd want to stain both sides and seal both sides. That way, you didn't have to come back year on year. The problem with a lot of clear finishes and stains are they do require upkeep annually. So the pigment in the stain, what makes it look a little bit thicker or gives it the color, could be viewed a lot like sunscreen. The thicker the sunscreen, the more protection from UV rays, which is actually what we're trying to prevent as UV damage on fence as well using stain sealant. So the thicker the stain, the thicker the color, the more UV protection, the longer UV protection. The thicker the sunscreen, the longer you can stay out in the sun before you reapply. Same thing applies to stain. The thicker the stain, the longer you can go without reapplying it. All in all, I mean, for a DIY project, this probably went just fine, and he's probably okay with doing it every year or probably every other year. There's several DIY projects around my house that are not kept up with as often as they should be. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. How do you think it went? Have you ever attacked a project like this using a pressure washer and clear finish? I'd like to hear from you guys in the comments below. Until next time, I'm Joe Everest, the fence expert, reminding you that good fences make good neighbors.